Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our Lexham Author Conversation series. My name is Scott Corbin, and I serve with the marketing team at Lexham Press. I'm delighted today to be joined by not just one, but two guests, the first of which is the award-winning Harold Senkbeil, author of The Care of Souls, Cultivating a Pastor's Heart, published in 2019 with Lexham Press. And I'm also joined by my dear friend Todd Hains, who is an acquisitions editor for Lexham Press. Today we're going to be discussing The Care of Souls' award-winning year, the editorial process for the book and other books, and some other projects by Hal. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining me.
Good to be with you.
Thank you, Scott.
So first, some congratulations are in order. Care of Souls has not just won one award or two awards, but three awards, including from publications like Christianity Today, the Gospel Coalition, and most recently, an ECPA Book of the Year award. So Hal, we're coming up on 1 year of publication. What has been your reaction to the positive reception that the book has received?
Well, needless to say, I've been very pleased. I have a friend who always uses the adjective shocked, and I would be tempted to use that myself because its response has been exceeded my expectations. I had a hunch it would be useful, but I didn't know it would be this useful. So it's been very, very good. And I get responses from all around the world, actually, about it. And it has every indication it might keep on going. So God be praised for that. Glad to be of help.
That's right. And then, this has not only been a labor of love for you, but also for you as well, Todd. So what are your thoughts on kind of the state of, evangelicalism today, preaching today, books on preaching, things like that? And why is it that you think this book has had such a warm reception?
Yeah. Well, Hal and I have talked about this a little, but I guess part of what I was thinking is that, especially my generation of evangelical types. So I grew up in the Evangelical Free Church in America, and there was a lot of pressure for numerical growth, and there's been a lot of different sort of models that have been pressed. A lot of that has to do with all this, it worked in one setting, it worked for businesses, it worked for those kinds of things. Why can't it work for pastoring? So the sort of classic would be the Campus Crusade model of go get the popular kids, and that way you can have your exponential growth. And there's something unsatisfying about that, where it's kind of treating people, unintentionally, it's treating people as widgets. And I think Hal is going back to the ancient role of pastoring. So he's really bringing back that caring for folks' concern. So that's a long haul conversation. And I think that's something people are really longing for, are long haul conversations. They don't want to be confronted right away with XY decision. And I think there's a piece of that where, because of what Hal is putting forth, sorry, I'm kind of thinking as I go here. But one of those pieces, I think if you're pushed too quickly to make a decision or to change something, it feels like you're not being listened to. And I think the approach that Hal is pushing is really fronting that piece of listening. And I've been thinking about that basically all year, about my own personal need to listen better, but also how badly I want to be listened to. And I think that's a piece that I've talked to several folks that when they have spoken with Hal in person, that's one of the first things that they've said. He's a good listener. And I have a hope that this is a book that will help other pastors and other Christians become better listeners. I hope that can be true of me too.
And that actually is, a good reminder. So, maybe there are some people who've not read the book, who maybe have heard about the book, have seen maybe some buzz about the book. But Hal, I would love to hear from you. If you were to kind of outline what is the central argument, or what is it that you're trying to do in the book for people who might not have read it or know about it, and also specifically, why should pastors read this book?
Right. Well, thank you. So to piggyback onto what Todd was saying, I mean, this is an idea whose time has come. We live in a time in which probably the most severe threat to physical health is loneliness, we are told. And of course, the current shutdown hasn't helped that a great deal. So listening, connecting with people, giving them a chance to speak to a real human being is in itself very, very helpful. So that's the very first step in the care of souls, to listen carefully. So the argument of the book is that pastors are to see themselves as a physician for souls, rather than just jumping right into whatever problems presented to them or the current circumstance that they're observing, to see that as a symptom of a deeper reality in terms of what is their relationship with that individual and God. And then to see themselves as a physician having been given certain tools and gifts by God through his word to address this individual with those gifts, to provide God's own healing by means of his word, because his word does exactly what it says. So this consciousness, self-consciousness of the pastor as being one who is serving Jesus by serving his people, seeing himself very consciously as an errand boy for Jesus, going into a variety of circumstances with confidence, because he knows that the Lord Christ wants to address the actual need, not just the felt need of the individual, but the genuine needs of people, with his forgiveness, with his life, with his salvation. So that gives the pastor greater confidence. So I think that what I want pastors and just laity to know is that if we're addressing the identity of the pastor, helping him to see himself as a servant of Christ and steward of God's mysteries, then he is well equipped to address any number of circumstances, including the current chaos that we're facing everywhere in the world right now.
Yeah, that's great, and it's interesting, kind of, Todd, going back to some of your comments, and then some of the things that you just said, Hal, as well. How there's a sense in which this sort of model is so refreshing, because again, it's taking hold of Christ's means for his people in order to think about the caring of souls, and not kind of some of these other methods or practices or things that, while maybe useful in certain areas, at least in terms of Christ's church, are not necessarily, not necessarily things that they're maybe not as amenable to. So one of the other things about this book that I love about it is that obviously the content is very beautiful. The writing is very beautiful. That's obviously something that the reviewers have found about the book, and part of the reason why they were drawn to it and why it won so many awards. But it also is physically beautiful. And so one of the things I think that would be kind of neat, and Todd, I would love for you to kind of speak to this, is what was it like in terms of the editorial process? Because a lot of people don't know what it's like to work on cover designs and specs and thinking about in sheets and stuff like that. And this is clearly something that you're passionate about, and wanting to make sure that the art is measuring up to the content. And so I would love to maybe hear from you a little bit in terms of the process of this book coming to be, through the creation of the cover and some of the other, especially the artwork within the book itself, and how, after Todd's done speaking, if there's anything that he misses, I'd love to hear you fill in the gaps. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, this book was an exciting one for art, for sure. And I think, I think Lexham, that we've done a lot of artsy sorts of things before this, particularly with Christian Essentials. I think that really upped the ante. There's one thing that I wish we would have done with that we didn't. But that'll just have to sit here in my heart and pain me. But one of the most exciting things about once you get a book in hardcover, there are a lot of other things that you can do. And there's something about a book in hardcover that conveys a different message. And I don't know, I've been thinking a lot about that with books. When I look at certain books that I have, there is just something about a paperback book that it doesn't convey the same sort of seriousness. And it became clear that while reviewing Hal's manuscript, that this was a book that deserved to be hardcover. Part of, actually, here, let me pull this. This is the book I think about. So I'm a Luther guy, Luther studies guy. And at the end of writing my dissertation, I got this book. This book is over 100 years old. And you can tell it looks old. But I don't know, does it really look 100 years old to you? It doesn't quite to me. But, they put a lot of care. It's not a great title. But, really beautiful stuff, really nicely bound and put together. And this book got me thinking, I want Lexham books to be books like this. That in 100 years, somebody that knows nothing about us, nothing about our mission, that they just stumble upon one of these books and they're like, wow, this book is really well put together. There's something that I need now from this book. That this book it lasted this long and it should continue to last. And that was something that I'd like to see with Hal's book. I would like it to be something that in 100 years, when we're all gone and forgotten, that it's not a book that's forgotten. And Hal had already gotten a bit of the way there. He has a friend who does stained glass artistry. And so this gentleman, Jonathan Mayer, had done one. So there's 6 images that you see. There's 6 full spreads. No, it's 5 spreads. He had done a single agricultural one. And then once we contracted the book, we talked with Jonathan about getting the other 4 as well. That really, really brings something to it. It's totally superfluous, right? The book doesn't actually need it, but it's something that really lifts the feel. And it's not really describable, I guess. And this is our first book that we had designed end sheets on.
Yeah, for people not in publishing, these are end sheets. These are designed end sheets, which people who in publishing live for this sort of stuff. Even though for probably maybe a lot of readers, they're kind of like, oh, that's kind of neat, and they see it once and maybe forget about it. People in publishing are like, wow, look at the end sheets. But anyway, I'll let you keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, and again, it's something that it's totally superfluous. Like the book doesn't need designed end sheets. The purpose of it is just to hold. It's a piece of paper that holds the cover to the block of pages. But I think that there's a lesson in this, right? That when we start to just make things, the aesthetics don't matter. It's just what's the purpose. There's something that's lost in that. There are all sorts of things that we think about, like in nature or in ourselves or in the world, that, strictly speaking, they're totally superfluous. But there's something about that that's fitting in the way that I think with Christian faith, etc. This sort of abundance of stuff. Anyway, I'm digressing. But this was our first book with designed end sheets. Since we've done 2 others, the Theology of Benedict XVI, which was the first one with colored end sheets. And then one of my books that just fell on the ground was C.S. Lewis's Spirits in Bondage, which also has end sheets. And we have plans for other things with Hal that would have designed end sheets coming up.
Yeah, Hal, go ahead. I would love to, hear from.
Yeah, let me jump in here. Far be it from me to disagree with my illustrious editor, but I would certainly disagree that these design features are superfluous. I mean, what you see is what you get in this product. To me, it's of one piece. The substance of the argument of the book and the way it's presented is a comprehensive whole. And so I think it goes together very nicely. And it does say, I think, to the reader, this is important. Even the layout of the pages, which are creative, and I think they are contemporary in the best sense, but also classic in the best sense, says something. And so my argument here regarding pastoral work is that it's a craft, and it's something that we learn from previous generations and we take forward during our own lifetime and hand it on to those that come after us. And in a very real way, I think Lexham has done the same thing with this particular book. It's taken the best of the craftsmanship of constructing a book, learning from previous generations, and it's now ready to take this and hand it to those who come after us. So I think it's wonderful.
So I'd love to transition a little bit to there's another book actually. So people who've read Care of Souls, they might not know that there's another book that you co-authored this year titled Church Leadership and Strategy for the Care of Souls in the Lexham Ministry Guides series.
Right.
And so first I've got one question for Hal and one question for Todd. So Hal, can you explain what that little book, the Church Leadership and Strategy book, is and how it relates to the Care of Souls? And Todd, I would love for you to, once Hal's done answering his question, explain what the Lexham Ministry Guide series is and what readers can expect. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So in a very real way, this little book is an accident. And yet it's a very happy accident because it's material that was prepared to be in the Care of Souls book. And Todd, being who he is, holds my feet to the fire in terms of length, readership, and so forth. And so these portions of the book, in his mind, didn't really fit within the larger book. And although I wasn't particularly happy with that, to hear that, I think his judgment has proven to be very much true. So as I've talked to some friends about it, I call the Lexham Guide kind of a field manual for the Care of Souls, because it has some of these practical applications related to leadership and strategy, which my friend and soon-to-be co-author Lucas Woodford, with another book coming up, authored, and then some chapters that I had regarding parish administration and the current care of souls, and then some things also about the pastoral care of pastors. So that's in this book currently, and then I'll let Todd talk about what's happening with the Lexham Guide from here on. And we talked about the hardcover and the paperback, so he can talk about that.
I don't think those chapters, they weren't strictly speaking say. There's importance to length of a book, and this wonderful book was getting long, and it was hard to trim back, and so that was a good way to fix it. But anyway, that material still needs to be out there, and it should be read, and it's good and helpful and important. But upon reflection, we've decided that we really want to go kind of a bigger direction with the Lexham Ministry Guides. And so just a few weeks ago, we brought on Hal as the general editor of the series, and we're working on sort of repositioning the series. So there'll be that book will be retypeset. It'll look a little different, and it'll be hardback. And right now, Hal and Lucas are working on adding a 5th chapter to that book. So the church leadership and strategy, what it goes through is sort of Lucas's story of failure. And then he sets up some tools about how to address leadership in a church setting. And then Hal has 2 chapters that are on some general principles for strategy. There are 8 steps in particular that I'm very fond of about setting out a strategic vision. And then the final chapter is addressing burnout. So it's kind of beginning where it ends. But when this material was taken out of the Care of Souls into a book on its own, it's missing some of the pieces that are sort of in the water in the Care of Souls. And that is, the pastors are the ears and mouths of Christ. And so Hal and Lucas are working on a final chapter that's drawing that out so that there's a really positive final vision of pastoral leadership. And then there's some some new series pieces that we're going to do. We're saying that because Jesus is Lord over all things, he's also Lord over all of the many varied tasks in pastoral work. And so we think that it's important to set that pastoral work in the context of worship. And so Hal and I have been going back and forth about how to do that well with this series. The goal is to have these books begin with some sort of prayer. We haven't quite cracked that nut yet about a way that is building on the deep sort of sources of liturgy, but in a way that's still approachable and useful to those who aren't accustomed to that style of worship. I'm really excited about the series. I think there's really a need. There are these basic things that people are looking for help to talk about, and this series is going to do that. And it's all centered in this big idea for the care of souls. So coming up, there are 3 books being written right now. So one is on stewardship, so stewardship for the care of souls. How raising money and many other things, how that actually has to do with a congregant's person. It's not just about buildings and stuff. The other book is, it'll be called Funerals. And it's going through sort of the Christian logic of a funeral, what it does, why it's necessary, and some practical pastoral helps of how to do that. That book will be written by Tim Perry, who edited the Theology of Benedict XVI. The stewardship book is by Nathan Meader and Heath Curtis. I always flip their names. I hope I didn't do it that time. And then the other one that's really exciting is a pastoral visitation book by Tyler Arnold in Missouri. He's going through also the logic of pastoral visitation. Why do we do it? How often should we do it? What are the kinds of things that you should be doing when you visit people? And there are conversations in the process of acquiring these books and thinking through how they go. There are things that have stirred me up to realize I think about a lot of these things, but I don't necessarily have them going on in a parish setting. So these are books that I'm actually in a certain way wanting to acquire out of my own personal need. And I'm hoping that reaches wider. I think it will. And it's really useful to have Hal as a guiding light of this rather than just this young blood.
That's great. That's great. So we'll be expecting some of those probably fall of this year?
Ooh, fall might be quick. No, yeah.
I might be speaking too soon. we'll be having them soon enough. So yeah.
Early spring of 2021, because we had to finish the rebrand on the covers and a new typeset. And I don't know which one will go first.
That's great.
It's soon.
That's great.
Yep. We'll have to do more things. I'll talk about it.
That's right. And then, so the last thing, and just with the remaining time that we have here, there's also some exciting news. Hal, you're also working on another book forthcoming from Lexham Press. It's going to be out, I think, early June. And I will go ahead and let you share that news. So if you want to explain what is the book, what's the title, this is maybe we can kind of officially announce about this book coming out. So yeah.
Right. Well, I'm kind of excited about it. It's called Christ and Calamity. And I have to give Todd credit because we make an interesting partnership, he and I. He's the idea guy. He keeps shoving off projects for me to address. And I keep telling him, well, as the Lord gives me strength, but I don't have that many years left. So he can't keep piling up these projects on my plate. But this one was thrust upon us, I think, by the current conditions. And so it was precipitated by the coronavirus chaos that we are facing right now, and particularly how this impacts Christians personally in terms of their fears and their distresses, certainly their disruptions. So what do we have to bring people in this current kind of a crisis situation by way of comfort and consolation? So currently that looks like it's going to be about 11 chapters, quite short, quite concise. And what's exciting about it is that Lexham is kind of giving this away, at least digitally, and making this available on all kinds of platforms. So maybe Todd can tell a little bit more about the technology behind it, and conceptually, he's seen a few of the chapters already, and I'll let him give his own impressions as this thing unfolds.
Well, I guess Scott's saying that we only have a little bit of time left, but yeah, Hal's doing all the things. So it's really seeing the vision that's cast in the care of souls applied to a specific instance, a specific situation. And so, yeah, we're halfway through, and it's really leading through speaking to individuals about casting all their cares on the Lord, which, it all sounds trite and typical, but I think the way that, when I say it that way, but the way that Hal is doing this, I don't think it's trite or typical. It's stuff that people really need to hear. When I read the first chapter, it was the kind of stuff that I really needed to hear when I was a 20-year-old kid, that all I wanted out of church was friends. And the pastoral leadership at that church was more interested in getting me to live a certain way. It wasn't necessarily bad, but I needed some of the other things first. And I got that sense that Hal's really addressing that in this book too.
If I could jump in, I said it was occasioned by the current crisis, but it certainly doesn't focus on that. In fact, very quickly it moves off of the coronavirus situation into the broader sphere of just uncertainty and suffering. How does a Christian address suffering and adversity when it comes into his or her life? And so we want to give not just trite formulas, but actually concrete help, pointing always to Christ in every chapter, but in a way that's specific to the real lived experience of people in situations of calamity.
That's great. And let's see if I can do this. We're doing Zoom. I will share the draft or the cover of the book. Here we go. For everyone to see, here is the cover of the new book, Christ and Calamity. So
wow, it's the first time I've seen it. So
there you go. Yeah, everyone is getting to see this in real time, watching Hal see his own book cover in real time. So
I hope you're not grimacing now.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, great.
You can save all your comments. You're really, yeah, that's right. Well, but that sounds great. Gentlemen, thanks so much. Like I said, this was a great year for not only the care of souls, but a lot of other great resources coming. And so I know I'm really hopeful to get to see these in print. Hal, thanks so much. And again, congratulations on all your awards for this year. So, yeah.
It's a joy, and accolades to Lexham Press, just a marvelous, marvelous company that's doing wonderful work for the kingdom in so many ways. So glad to be a part of it.
Excellent. All right, guys, have a good one.